book club, and any of you guys been in a book club before?
No.
No, me never.
Yeah, you never. Okay, so this is something that I've been in some before, but I haven't done it very frequently. But basically, it's that format where every month or so you have a book that you all read together, and then come together and discuss it. And it just kind of creates a fun way to, well, in this situation, practice your English, practice your pronunciation on a topic that is, it's also an interesting topic and things. So Fab, welcome. Here, let's see, we got to get your microphone working. I'm not seeing that you're connected to the audio yet, so you might need to go, let me think for a second where that might be.
I think everybody has to unmute themselves before they speak.
Yeah. Oh,
okay. At least
okay.
I had to unmute myself.
Okay, so you're automatically muted. There we go. Fab, you there? Oh wait, no, you muted yourself again. Try it again. Okay, and Herminio, it looks like you are muted as well. And I actually might be able to unmute you. Let me try that. How about that? Fab, you there? So this is going to be a little bit tricky kind of to make sure that we get everything working. Herminio, are you there? Okay, let's see if I can hear you. I want to be able to hear you. No, it's not working. So okay, let's go down. So everybody down in the lower left-hand corner has like the audio function. So look at the very bottom left-hand corner, and there's a little caret, an arrow next to it. So if you click on that, then you can select a microphone. Okay, so at the top it says select a microphone. Mine is on built-in input because I have a microphone there, but it'll show you kind of the different options there. So you might have to check on that to see if that's working. And then also the speaker. You can kind of check your speaker. Let me see what, oh, okay. And if you click on the button that says audio options, then you can go there and you can test your microphone and speakers. You guys able to see that? Okay, so let's just do a little test to see who is able to, who I'm hearing. Nawa, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, yep.
Cool.
Okay, so Nawa's working. Let's see, how about Svetlana? You still working?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Rafal, you still there?
Yeah, still here.
Okay, Arminio?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can. And then Fab, if we can get you going. Start it. Are you there? Okay, so Fab is the only one that I can't hear yet. So you might want to go down to the mute, where it has the microphone mute, and click on the arrow next to it, and go to audio options. You see that option? So audio options, and then where it says leave computer audio, below it says test computer, mic and speakers. So that might be something you need to do. Let's see how I can help. So I'm going to let you, we're going to kind of get started. I'm going to come back to you, Fab, and see if we can, see if you're able to get it working. Okay. And Manio, you're going to make us all want Skittles. Is that just a poster on the wall, or what is that?
Yes, actually, I'm here in a meeting room and we have a couple of posters. One is for
Okay.
Skittles, the other one is for Starbucks.
Well,
You know,
good.
Good.
a couple of things that we make.
That's fun. Well, good. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm excited you're here. So welcome to our first book club meeting. So this is an opportunity we have to both just talk, like practice English and practice discussing, practice your pronunciation, and talk about a topic that is, you know, that can really help you in your success with the program, success in your life, all of that. So the first book we chose was The Power of Habit. Here, how many of you have read at least part of it?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay. Good. So you'll be able to give some good insight here. So what I have done, and let me actually see. And this is a new format for me as far as this meeting, the Zoom meeting format. So bear with me if I am not sure exactly how to use everything, but I think I've done a little bit of training, so hopefully we have it all figured out. But I have just like a few kind of a framework to go by as we go through discussing this book. I'm not going to correct you on your pronunciation or your English or anything like that during this format. It's not like one of our kind of our webinar, our Q&A webinars, our study groups, where that's kind of the point of it, is to get feedback. This is just an opportunity to talk and discuss and practice and things for you, and for us to just get familiar with these concepts from this book. And I think that book clubs are nice because it motivates you to read books that you maybe have wanted to read or are interested in, but need a little motivation to get it read. You know, sometimes that it takes having a little bit of a group to hold you accountable to that. At least that works for me. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and kind of get started here. And I think that you can, here, let me go back. I'm just trying to get the controls right here. Okay, so it looks like I can't control who I see while I'm doing this, but can you guys all see the whole screen? Yeah, there you go. So Fab,
Yes.
have you been able to get the audio working for Fab? Maybe turn up the volume or something like that on yours, because it's almost like there's this very faint. You might have to play with it a little bit more, Fab, as we get going.
I can see from here that she's muted.
You see that she's muted?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, okay, Fab, try speaking again.
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can. It's really kind of muffled. Oh, you just muted yourself again. Here we go.
Okay, let me go.
It might just be the quality of your microphone. So you might just like unplug the headset and see if the computer microphone might work better, and try that out. Okay? So I'll let you kind of work on that.
Is that a bit better now?
Yes, there we go. That's much better. Okay. So
Can you hear me well now?
Yes, we can. Excellent. So
That's
everybody's
great.
working here. Okay, good. Does anybody want to volunteer to read this section? I was just going to kind of present an idea from the book, and then and then above I have you know, some questions for you that we can discuss and people can kind of talk about. So who wants to read this for us?
I can read.
I can read. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, Fab, go ahead.
Okay, I'll read. Choice or habit? When does it shift? Do you have an example? Most of the choices we make each day may feel like the products of well-considered decision making, but they're not. They're habits. And though each habit means relatively little on its own, over time, the meals we order, what we say to our kids each night, whether we save or spend, how often we exercise, and the way we organize our thoughts and our routines have enormous impacts on our health, productivity, financial security, and our happiness. Hang on. Bear with me, please.
Mm-hmm.
One paper published by a Duke University researcher in 2006 found that more than 40% of the actions people performed each day weren't actually decisions, but habits prologue.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts on this as they thought about that? So at one point it kind of shifts, it shifts from being a decision that we make to more of a habit. Have any of you guys kind of seen that in your own life and that shift happen?
Yeah, I saw that. I read a different book also, and it says, like, the first advice they give, just follow, like, one day, look at your daily routine and figure out how many choices you actually make.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't really recognize how many times you make a choice during the day. And it's really interesting how, like, we actually don't make them, but we already know what we, like, not know, but we're already programmed to do a specific thing.
Yeah.
That's why you need to do one thing for like a month to change your habit.
Mm-hmm.
Something also, in addition to that, is that it was so interesting to me knowing that our brain doesn't have the capacity to think about all the things that we are doing in a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So what the author was telling us is that if we think in everything that we are doing in a daily basis, the brain will shut down because it doesn't have the capacity to keep everything up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we are using another section of the brain in order to keep information in that, and that is the 40% of the daily activity that we are doing on a daily basis. So that was like very interesting for me. Also reading the examples from the couple of persons who lost memory and the way that they were achieving habits even when they didn't have any memory in place.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, that overload that happens when you're, if we really had to think about every stimulus that came to us during the day, we would just shut down because there's just too much. And so we do have our brain as a survival mechanism for our brain to go into these habit loops, so that we can have the higher level thinking, and that functioning. So that was incredibly interesting. Anybody else have any other thoughts?
Yeah, this novel, at the same time, I think the part of it is the decision fatigue. If you have to make all these stimulus, all these things come to your mind and make them a decision every time you have anything to do, your brain is so tired. Maybe by midday, you are really not any active anymore after you get to the point. So some of the items basically say what you do every morning. When you wake up, you don't want to make a get into a decision-making process to go to a bathroom or get your tooth brushed. Right? It's part of a habit, so you don't have to waste any energy to make that kind of decisions. So that the brain is still active when you are maybe starting your first action in the morning. The brain is fresh and you have energy to do it.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, thinking of it in terms of that energy. Yeah, if we, our brain and our body, everything takes so much energy. And if it's spending on brushing our teeth, then we're not going to have it, right? Anybody else have any specific examples in their life of how they, had to develop a new routine for themselves and then and then recognizing it, that it became a habit eventually?
It's now again, it's not a specific example, I would say, but it's for example, I have two kids. You know, one is 6 now. He is in first grade. Until maybe a couple of weeks ago, you know, I used to be in bed maybe until 6 or maybe even late. Now I know, you know, I need to drop him to the school before 8 and, you know, get my work on time and all that. So that kind of, those process by themselves stimulates us to kind of wake up early and track that change, you know, that it's kind of get into a habit after a couple of days or maybe a couple of weeks. You know, you are not even watching a clock, or you don't need any kind of alarm to wake up earlier. So that's basically what I'm trying to kind of give into the fact is, it depends on a lot of circumstances. The circumstances itself help you to change your habit and help you to make those decision-making process much more simpler and make them kind of a habit.
That motivation is like, okay, I have to do this, so this is how I'm going to change and shift that schedule.
Shift that schedule.
Perfect. Okay. Now we had someone join us. Let me kind of shift real quick. Oh, maybe he's gone. Okay. Oh, well. I'll see if he comes back. Okay. So yeah, so it's such an interesting concept. And I think that's important, just even understanding a little bit of the neuroscience there of what is exactly happening in our brain when that happens, just kind of gives that understanding of like, oh, okay. So if I think that this whole book and this whole idea just it's more empowering to think, okay, well, I can, you know, I have control over this, or I can, understanding how it works, even neurologically, and how much we have a choice versus a habit kind of helps us in that deliberate process of changing habits. Okay, who wants to explain the habit loop for us?
Okay. I can explain that.
Okay, Svetlana, go ahead.
Well, as I remember, we always like have a routine, which we have a stimul, like something stimulus to make a specific move, and after that we get a reward. That's why we're doing this. We don't understand that, but we're doing everything for reward. And if we want to change some habit loops, we need to find this reward and we need to find the stimul, and we need to like track down the stimul and find some other reward, or find the same reward but in a different habit loop. Like he's given example how he was eating cookies every lunch at work, and it's kind of like he gained weight because of that, and he decided to change this habit loop. And he was tracking down the stimul. He was reward. He was trying to understand why he does it. And it ended up that he needs to just talk to someone, and it's a good way to go to the dining room and eat this cookie and talk to coworkers. And when he changed it, he just the same time every day he would come to the other desk of his coworker and talk to him, and that's how he changed his habit loop. He started eating apple instead of cookie, and it was the same reward. Conversation.
He recognized it wasn't about the cookie. You know, the cookie wasn't the reason, you know, he was going there. The reason, the cue, was that he was bored, right? It was kind of he just needed some kind of, you know, stimulation because he was a little bit bored or something. And so he knew the cue, and he knew he figured out what the cue was, and he figured out what the reward was, is that when he goes in and eats the cookie, he has that social interaction, and that's what he was going for, not necessarily the cookie. So he needed to just change the routine of it. Yeah. Does anybody have anything else to kind of add from that? we'll be talking a little bit more about the habit loop and how it applies to speaking English and things like that. But
yes, something that I wanted to say is there is another book, maybe you have read it. The name is Triggers. And
triggers. Okay.
this is very similar to what we were reading in this
Uh-huh.
book, because triggers is talking about everything that is touching your red or green button. So for instance, if you see someone that you don't like, so you are gonna be angry, for instance. That is a
Okay.
trigger, you know?
Uh-huh.
But on the other hand, if your husband comes to your house with flowers, he's gonna touch the green button. So you are gonna have another trigger, you know?
Okay.
So, however, the difference for me was that when reading this book, this is not only a I would say a metaphysical or high level mental thing. This is actually a chemical thing. This is
Mm-hmm.
a medical condition also. So going back to the habits, something that I saw, and the book is telling us that, is that when you acquire an habit, you never lose it. So you can override it by another habit, but the
Mm-hmm.
habit that you already acquired, you are going to have it forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then something also important is that your brain never knows when it is a good habit or when it is not.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to bring out of the gland that we are using for retaining this information and to process in our brain if the habit is good or not. But even with that, if we identify something which is not good, we will be able to override this with another habit, but we will still have the bad habit in place. So taking again the correlation with triggers, so we need to take care of the triggers that we are facing every day, because
Mm-hmm.
the bad habit is gonna come up. It's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be shown again
Mm-hmm.
if we don't really are aware of
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's the beauty between us and these rats that they were doing experiments on, is that we have that higher level thinking of being able to decide and say, okay, I don't want, this is a good habit, this is a bad habit. Here's one that I want to keep, and here's one that I want to kind of, like you said, you can't necessarily get rid of, but you can put it in the background, right?
Right.
And that we can decide which ones are, and it almost takes a higher level. It's almost that emotional intelligence of being able to identify, okay, why am I feeling that way? What triggers, are there, and being able to really look at it more analytically in your life and identifying those, because it does take some mental work, to identify those triggers, right? It takes a little bit of figuring to know what is causing me to do this, this habit. So it's so interesting to kind of think of it in terms of that way, because you really just kind of, I do this habit. I have this habit of like biting my nails, say if I have a habit of biting my nails, being able to identify the trigger, what is the cue, what is the trigger, and what am I getting from it? And what we can do with that. Okay. Who wants to read this for us?
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, Nawa, go ahead.
Habits and destiny. As the next two chapters explain, habits can be ignored, changed, or replaced. But the reason the discovery of the habit loop is so important is that it reveals a basic truth. When a habit emerges, the brain stops fully participating in the decision making. It stops working so hard or divest focus to other tasks. So unless you deliberately fight a habit, unless you find a new routines, the pattern will unfold automatically.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of touched on this already, that the habit's going to stay there, but we can override it. Have you guys had a situation? I mean, obviously English and pronunciation and things like that, we'll be getting into kind of those habits. But besides that, habits that you've had to deliberately fight against and to replace, and have you been successful in that in other areas of your life?
I'm not with the R sound.
Not yet with the R sound, huh? You gotta deliberately fight a little harder, huh? Oh, that's good. I know that diet and exercise is always just a huge one, you know, of just, we get into these habits, whether good or bad habits. And I think of it a lot with my kids, especially after reading this book, a lot with my kids, as far as like, let's get them into some good habits while they're little, so that they are, you know, are doing things the way that so it's not, they don't have to deliberately fight against these bad habits, you know, as they're going on. Of course, they're going to develop bad habits eventually in their life that they're going to have to fight against. But my job as a parent is to help them have as few as possible that I created for them. But does anybody have any other kind of examples of this that you had to deliberately fight against? Nothing? You guys are champions then. My goodness.
No, it's just
Yeah.
We fight every day. We fight every day.
Every day, as you say? Fab?
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
Well, I do have a lot of good habits as well, because I use a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
What I do find is that if I use my electronic calendar,
Mm-hmm.
even though sometimes I don't really feel like doing what my body is telling me to do, I can actually try and control my habits. For example, I used to walk in the evening or go to the gym in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, I've decided to walk in the morning, because sometimes I must admit that it works, but other times it's not easy. For example, if it's cold or if it's raining today and I decide, look, it's raining today, I won't go. And then the next day, it might be a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a decision making, I think. If, for example, I find like I've already decided from the night before what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
If I set my mind up from the night before, it makes it a lot easier for me to do it in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I've already set up my calendar, sometimes I've got my calendar there and I'm like, well, today I just didn't practice my pronunciation pro speaking skills. I've done it. But there are days like in 5 days in a row, I practice at the same time, because if I say, now it's 6 o'clock, every time at 6 o'clock, that's what I do. 6 o'clock in the evening, I put some food in the oven, and the moment the food is in the oven, I'm going to go and practice the pronunciation pro, and it works. So what I need to do is to train myself into, for example, if the phone rings at that time, to just put it on silent. Because if I permit myself to pick up the phone and it's gone, the habit could be gone. So I miss my chance for that day, and therefore the next day it could be a little bit harder.
Oh,
that's what I found.
Yeah, I love that, because as I was thinking through this and thinking about the speech habits, I was more thinking the motoric speech habits that we are, you know, kind of replacing some of the habits that we've created with other habits. But I didn't even think about it in terms of our time management, you know, and what it takes for you guys to do that time management piece, and the habits that have to be in place to even just have that set time in your calendar to make sure you sit down and work on it. Yeah. Does anybody else have any strategies that have worked for them as far as their time management and being able to work on your pronunciation?
Yeah, time management always, I think, keeping log of what you do, maybe it's a very difficult process in my view. It's just unless you keep track of what you do every day, it really seems it's moving as smooth as you can think of. But you may be, in my case, when I figured that out, I was watching way too much of television time. I'm spending maybe a couple of hours in a day just watching, it's a basketball season, you watch a game, it's 2.5 hours. Football season, you are kind of there, you are spending your
It's a
3
long
hours.
game.
Yeah, 3 hours. So, in between, you just need, unless you log it and really see in front of you, okay, how much productive time you have in, this 10-12 hours of window, and how much time is really, you can transfer that into be more productive part of the life. That's how I figure out, on my time management, and I adjusted those couple of habits on sitting in front of TV or doing all that kind of things.
Oh, that's excellent. Okay.
Maybe something else that we need to keep into consideration is that if we want to fight a bad habit, we need to go back to the intentionality concept. Because I think that during one regular day, we are doing a lot of things. We are being keeping busy, we have a lot of things to do, but actually success is not a matter of doing a lot of things, but doing the most important. So by having the intentionality, we are going to find the 2 or 3 more important things that we need to pay attention to instead of doing a lot of things. For instance, I used to wake up every day, and the very first thing that I was doing is to look at my calendar and check my email and see some text messages. So, and by having this information, I got my agenda for the day, because I was noticing that the email coming from my boss, it was so important because he was asking me for something, a report or something else. I also was paying attention for the text message coming from one of my coworkers telling me that one of the machines were down or something like that. So then I started the day working in all these emergencies that we had. And at the end of the day, I had a feeling that I was accomplishing something. But to be honest, I wasn't, because the most important things that I needed to do were not done, because I didn't have any space, I didn't have any time to do them. So by talking about intentionality, we will be able to see which are the more important things that we need to do during the day. And then by working on them, we will be making time behind these things that we need to get done, other than working in the more urgent things that we need to do too.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. I totally agree with Harmeen. And that's basically, it reminded me one thing, maybe a couple of years ago, I watched one experiment from a professor. It's not an experiment, but he was demonstrating for an MBA class in some of the university. He was taking a jar and then putting a big, put the big golf ball inside it. And then he asked for all the class, hey, is this full? And kind of a student, yeah, it's full. And then he dropped some pebbles, the smaller things. And then again, the response was, it's already full. And by then, the students get some idea of, there is some more room available, is still there. Then he drops the sand, and there is a room for sand. And finally, he drops, that was probably more humorous than anything else, and he bring in a couple of can of beers and open those beers into it. It's simply, it's finally how you prioritize all these things, and how you handle it is, the things may look full and you may think that's already done, but there is still a room to kind of accommodate a few things and prioritize what is important and how you handle it.
Yes, starting with those most important things that you have consciously decided this is what's going to be, you know, the most important, instead of, and like you were saying, Armino, is instead of being reactive, you be proactive, you know, instead of reacting to what's coming at you. It's that difference of being proactive and saying, this is what I'm going to do with the day, instead of having other people tell you what you're going to do with the day.
Exactly, because otherwise, if you don't do that, the habit of being reactive, you're going to show up.
Absolutely. Good point. I love that. Okay, good. All right, I just had a couple of quotes that I like, just about you know, we're fighting against these kind of habits. And at first it takes a pretty good fight, right? You're seeing that with the pronunciation practice. It takes a pretty good effort there to really kind of fight against some of those habits. And it takes that deliberate effort. You have to be proactive in, you know, your study time, proactive in the way that you're going about it. And some of my students, you know, especially when they're at the beginning of the course, they're thinking, oh, this is a hard fight. This is a hard fight. Is it ever going to get easier? And the answer is yes. Yes. Just like every other habit that you've fought against, if you are consistent with that, then it does get easier. And this is a very common quote that I actually grew up with. My mom liked to say it a lot. That which we persist in doing becomes easier to do. Not that the nature of the thing has changed, but our power to do it has increased. So that ability has increased for it. And in thinking of it in terms of this book, the neuroscience of it is that the action hasn't changed, but the habit has been developed, right? And then it kind of goes into more of an automatic mode, because we have done it consistently enough that we have developed that habit, and it gets easier to do. Have you guys? Yeah, go ahead.
So it's just like walking or driving.
Exactly. The more you've done it. And have you ever tried to then drive different or walk different? Then maybe a doctor says, oh, your leg is pointed out. You need to kind of point your leg in as you're walking because you're now having hip problems. Then it's like, okay, now I have to relearn to walk, and, you know, I have to be conscious of that. But eventually you can start doing it the different way, because it creates that new habit. Yeah. Another one that I like with this idea, and I had shared this one recently, is everything is hard before it becomes easy. that concept. Everything is hard before it becomes easy. And to me, I feel like everybody can learn whatever they want to learn. It's just how much they're willing to put into it, right? How long are they willing to practice or work on that thing? I feel like I believe sincerely that everybody is capable of learning anything they really want to learn, and developing skills and talents in whatever they want to. They just have to be willing to put in the effort. So have you, and let's think of it in terms of the pronunciation. What skills have you worked on in the pronunciation that have now become easier for you? Have you guys had a specific sound or a specific lesson or things that have become a bit easier now that you've practiced it?
Yeah, I think the TH sound, because it's the biggest problem for people from Russia, because we don't have anything like this, and we don't have any sound switches between teeth. It took me a while just to have this habit. I still sometimes, like now, forget.
You're doing a great job with it.
But now I know what I need to look for. I need to follow that, and just
good. Yeah, that's a good example. That TH sound is always, actually TH, there are very few, if any, languages that have that TH sound in it. So everybody has a hard time, seems to have a hard time with that TH sound. So that's why it's at the beginning of the course, because it does take some time to get that habit, to correct that habit. And But I do find that later in the course, my students, you know, I'll be working with them and say, did you notice that you're doing that TH sound all the time now? And they're like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about it in a while. And it does, it kind of, they've retrained it. So now it's a lot easier. Whereas the beginning they were thinking, there is no way I'm going to get this. There's no way I'm going to be able to feel comfortable, but they do. They do. Rafal, are you still here, Rafal? Okay, anyway, go ahead. Fabu.
For me, one challenge. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
One challenge is to open my mouth because, and to do the TH sound as well. I have to be conscious of that.
Okay.
Opening my mouth, because for me, growing up from a French background, I tend to close my mouth because French, you just close your mouth. But now for me to open my mouth, which in Australia, my husband opens his mouth a lot.
Yeah.
And I tend to realize how much he opens his mouth.
Yeah.
So for me, I have to be really conscious of that one and work at it, keep on working at it, like open my mouth. For me, it's like an effort.
Yes.
It's remembering. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to just kind of go into this real quick, that habit loop for your spoken English. You just mentioned, you know, for you, a big part is opening your mouth. So that is something that we can set up as a cue for you as you're speaking. If we can kind of say, okay, as I'm speaking, if I can just think, open my mouth, you know, open my mouth more, how much more all of the sounds will come together with just that one cue for you. And it comes down to those 3 easy tips very often. It's one of those 3, either slowing down, moving your mouth, or speaking up tends to be that cue that helps you do all of the other things that you've been practicing. And so I do find that tends to help, like you were just saying. Once you kind of were conscious of that and you started moving your mouth more, even in explaining that, you were moving your mouth more. And, you know, and there was, you know, that much more, precision in the way you spoke. So that was really interesting. That was good. So setting that up for yourself as a cue, of saying, that's going to be my cue, you know, just opening my mouth more is my cue. So whenever you start practicing, so your cue is open my mouth. So whenever you're practicing on your own, open your mouth. And then when you go into the routine of reading or practicing your pronunciation, then that's the routine that you're going through, is opening your mouth. And the reward is that you are more precise, and you're feeling good about the way you speak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I also practice sometimes. I do the recording. That works for me. Like I record myself reading or speaking something, and then I listen to it. When I listen, I can hear where I'm going wrong. Yes. And therefore I go back and I correct myself.
Fantastic.
That helps. Yeah. And I see improvement there. Good. When I do it that way.
Has anybody else tried that, doing the recordings?
Yeah, I tried. I mean, I'm trying sometimes.
Yeah, good. Good. Anyone else?
So in my case, I think that I'm facing a different thing, because I have been living here in the States for almost 1 year.
Okay.
Before this, I used to have meetings every 2-3 weeks for 20 minutes, maybe something like that. So I said that I could speak English, but actually when I came here, I just noticed that I didn't speak anything at all. So now what I'm facing is that sometimes I'm having a very good days in where I feel so comfortable talking and I can understand the Georgia Southern accent. So I feel so comfortable. But for instance, I can tell you during this week, I feel very demoralized, you know? So my morale is very low, because I think that instead of making progress, I'm going down. I mean, I'm decreasing my level of speaking, not maybe understanding, but the level of speaking. And I have seen this before because sometimes I have had very good weeks in where I feel very good, but then in a couple of weeks I'm gonna feel the same, so that I'm trending negative. So is there something that you have seen in one of your students happening that I feel like if I were in a roller coaster, that sometimes I'm doing well and then the other week I'm doing like not any progress at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a couple of thoughts. Nawa, I heard your head. I saw your head shaking when he was doing that. Are you experiencing kind of the same?
No, absolutely yes, and also I think the other aspect of that I'm thinking maybe more on from this book as well, breaking these components into smaller components, focusing on something that kind of having a specific problem on a particular day. So making that keystone habits and the small wins, that is the big concept of this book, and I like that very much. The small win concept that I always kind of use on my work. I try to break every pieces of work not lasting any more than 8 hours. So that way, if I start something in the morning, I know at the end of the day I accomplished something. So maybe in the speaking part as well, when I feel that kind of scenario at any moment, I just go back and focus on that specific sound. If I have a problem with the or the raw, that's always a problem for me. There is no, it's been a couple of years with the program, but again, it's not being, I blame on that for myself, not being too much involved with the webinars and all that. But when I feel that, I go back and at least try to put some effort, maybe it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but just focused on one thing and get that kind of you will realize that it's improving at some point, and then at some points you don't, because you are at kind of a stagnation point. You already reached to a point where you may need outside help to move forward. So that might be the point. When I have that problem, what I do, I usually come back to my work next day or maybe the same day when we have time. Then I go back and talk to some native speakers. Hey, how you pronounce this word? How do you do this? Is this the right way? What's the difference between my pronunciation and yours? They kind of give me some feedback. They are not definitely linguistic teacher or anything, but they probably don't give you the basics, but say, hey, maybe this sound is a little bit longer than I have, or maybe maybe you are tapping this sound somewhere. That's how I usually do.
Have you tried to use the online dictionary where you can listen to the word whenever you doubt how to pronounce a word? Just use that dictionary. It helps a lot.
Yeah, no, I do that, but at the same time, the problem with the dictionary is that sometimes it helps very well. Sometimes I find, again, at the stagnation point, there is some sounds
you might not hear it. Yeah.
You might not hear right there, but when you speak it, you realize you are not telling it the right way. But when you listen it, there is really difficult to kind of get that difference clear. There are few words, definitely I have some examples, but let's not get into that.
So a couple of thoughts that I have on that too, and that excellent points. And I think that, in every area you can kind of see where as you grow, sometimes there's a plateau that happens, and you kind of have to make either an extra effort to get past that plateau, or just change the way that you're doing things to get to that next level. So as far as the roller coaster, it could be a matter of two different scenarios. One is you kind of get going, you think you're doing well with your speech, and the motivation to practice kind of on your own decreases. So you might not be kind of doing that daily practice and keeping up with it, besides just your day-to-day interactions. And then your skills might start slipping, because you're not having that focused practice on it. And then you might kind of slip down, and kind of get into that. So that could be one scenario. Another scenario is, like we were saying, is that as your skills increase, your perception is going to change as well. So like you're noticing more and more, as your skills increase, you're noticing more and more how other people are saying it and how you should be saying it. And, and that might be increasing. It might not be that you're getting worse. It could be that you're getting better, and that you're hearing things more clearly, and you're recognizing the differences more. And so your standard of what your expectation is has increased. And so then you feel like you've gotten worse, when really you're actually getting better, but you just need to take it to that next level,
It's like you're raising the bar. So the bar is
Yes, the bar
higher.
keeps raising, and it keeps getting more difficult, and you think, oh, I'm doing terrible. But really, it's just because you keep raising that bar for yourself.
Because you're more aware of what you are saying and how you are saying it. You are correct, actually.
Yes.
That's what I find. And that's where it helps go and record yourself and do it again and again, particularly if it's something that you are listening, like from your lesson. You can record yourself again and again and again. And the more you record yourself, you will listen, that the better you are doing. Yeah. It's just an awareness. You are correct.
Yeah.
Once you are aware that this is not the correct way to pronounce it, you want to do better.
Because I've had a lot of students, actually, especially students who their company has paid for them to come through the program, so they're not necessarily motivated themselves at first to do it. They'll start with the program, and then all of a sudden, and they'll think they're doing fine. They'll be like, oh, I don't have that big of a problem with pronunciation. I'm doing just fine. And then they start in on the lessons, and then they're like, wait a second. I am doing that different, but I've never heard that before. I've never, now that I'm doing the listening exercises, I'm realizing I am doing that different than a native speaker. And so their level, at first they were like, I'm doing fine. And then they were like, I'm doing terrible. I've really got to work on this. And then their, that expectation changes, or the way they perceive themselves change. And then they're motivated to work on it. So, yeah. So it's kind of interesting that perception and the way that we hear things, and the way that's such a shift that happens as you go through the course too. And actually, I was actually telling Svetlana before all of you, the rest of you showed up, is that our Russian students tend to be a lot more have a lot higher standard for themselves than some of our other students. Like, they want to be perfect, and have nothing, no trace of an accent. And obviously that's a generalization, just in general, but they tend to be a little bit harder on themselves. And so there are different perceptions, and it can come from culture. It can come from, your time in the US, or your time in an English speaking country, or your experiences. I mean, it all contributes. So
I think that a person does get better, but at some stage you need to accept yourself. And while we work on the pronunciation, accept who we are. And how can I explain that? Like, be who you are and just try and make people understand you. Find out like what you need to do, like open your mouth more.
Mm-hmm.
Say the same word even if you have an accent, but if you're opening your mouth more and you're speaking up,
Mm-hmm.
and speaking up in another thing, when a person has an accent, they do tend not to speak up. But if you do that, you keep speaking louder,
Mm-hmm.
other people can hear you better, and
Mhm.
therefore it makes it a lot easier on the others. I think for other people to listen to us, and yeah, at some stage accept yourself. It's not that you don't want to move from where you are,
Mm-hmm.
but don't be way too critical about yourself. I think so. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's going to be different for everyone as far as what their goals are and what they want to achieve as far as their pronunciation and their accent. But I do actually in the alumni class. Has anybody in gone through the alumni course and watched the video? I have a video called Accent and Self-Perception, and it talks about that where once you get to a certain level and you're clear and you're feeling good and feeling confident, sometimes it's a matter of shifting the way you perceive your accent, and it's not necessarily a matter of continuing to increase the way that your exact precision of your pronunciation or anything. Sometimes it has more to do with your perception, because everyone around you is probably saying, oh no, they're nice and clear, I don't even think about it, it's not a big deal to me. But in your head, you're thinking, everybody's hearing my accent, everybody thinks I'm different, everybody's, and you're kind of projecting that on other people when really they may or may not be thinking that.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly. I think when the awareness increases, if you pronounce any word in a wrong way that you think, okay, this is the wrong way, then you go back and try to correct it. That kind of more, what I'm finding is creating more confusion rather than helping. So if you when you are speaking, if you pronounce a word, whether it is right or wrong, nowadays I kind of stop going back and correcting it. At the beginning I was, when I see that, oh, okay, this is a wrong way, I need to say this way, I try to go back and repronounce that word in the sentence. When you have a regular conversation, or when you are in the meeting or presenting something, that's kind of I find that it creates more confusion than helping us. So when you are speaking, my finding is just take your own pace, take your own speed, own ideas there, and just proceed with that, rather than trying to kind of make everything correct there. It's probably going to be a little difficult. Rather than making everything correct, just go ahead, proceed with that. Maybe I still kind of do, when I go for a big meetings or a presentation, I beforehand tell them, hey, I'm not a native speaker. Okay, if you find a problem, stop me anytime. I will slow down, or I will try to my best, whatever the way I can deliver the message. Or maybe at the end, I can go have a side conversation with someone who really have a problem. I kind of let them know, I'm not a native speaker. You may have a problem understanding me, but I'm here to work with you.
But I can understand you clearly.
Doing a good job. Well, I think he brings a good point, is that he's doing the work beforehand to make sure that he is doing the sound, he is learning and improving and doing all that. That's all that happens before the presentation. So you work and you practice and you do your very best, but I think what Na was saying is that at the time of the presentation, that's not the time to be correcting yourself or doing any of that. That's the time to just do your best, know that you might make mistakes, but I think that strategy of being upfront and saying, hey, this is not my first language. And so there might be some, some errors, and just addressing that at the beginning, I think is a great strategy, because first of all, it sets the stage of just like, yeah, this might be something, and it gives you a little bit of wiggle room, to say, yeah, I might make mistakes, and that's fine. And it reminds your audience that, hey, I speak more than one language. This is not my this is not my primary language. And especially native speakers, most of us don't speak multiple languages like all of you guys do. And so reminding them of that and just saying, hey, this is my second language, it just it helps them shift their brain to say, oh yeah, that's right. This is this is another language that they have learned and and are proficient in. Of course they're gonna, they might make some mistakes, and that's okay. So there's a number of things that are happening really well with what Noah was saying. The preparation beforehand, kind of setting the stage that way, and being forgiving of yourself, and not causing that extra confusion by trying to be perfect, but just letting it flow the way it will. And then at the end, kind of saying, okay, well, there are things to improve, but I'll do that on the front end for next time. So I think there's a number of great strategies there. Thank you, Noah.
I think we can also work on one word at a time. I remember many years ago, for example, if people would ask me to repeat a word every now and then I work on that word. Mm-hmm. When I'm at home, I might be doing something. I work on that word. I open my mouth and I use that word properly. And then with time, I found that I'm pronouncing that word really well. People never ask me to say that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, those problem words, I kind of differentiate between, we want to work on, you don't want to open up the dictionary and be like, I'm going to work on every single word individually. There's the way that the program is structured is we work on sounds, because when you work on sounds, then you're going to be able to use either correct sound no matter what word that sound is in. So it makes it, instead of one word at a time, you're able to use that whole, you're able to cover a lot of words by just focusing on one sound. So that's the strategy as far as the whole, but then you have specific problem words that are specific to you that you do need to take note of. And then, the way that you're saying that is making sure that you practice those specific words until they're not a problem. Yeah, that's excellent. Good strategies. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That one works, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I like this is the fun part about book club, is that it kind of goes the direction of wherever you guys are wanting to take it. And I love that. So I'm not set to any kind of things here, but I just thought I'd kind of bring up a few ideas with this habit loop, with spoken English. Is sometimes this is kind of the habit loop that can develop. Is that the cue, like say you're giving a presentation, the cue is, oh, I've got adrenaline, I've got nerves going, okay, that's the cue, and I need to speak or give this presentation. The routine is kind of the default routine that I've noticed is, then I want to speak really fast. And the reward that comes from that is, if I speak fast enough, the conversation or the presentation will end faster. And that's the reward, is we get done with it fast. Okay. So this is one habit loop that I've seen happen. How can we modify that? There might be, just even sometimes the cue is I start speaking in English. I just start talking in English. And sometimes that habit loop becomes, I mispronounce words, or I'm kind of stumbling along. And instead of a reward, it becomes, oh, I don't feel very confident. And then this cycle continues in that then I'm going to speak less, because then I don't want that routine of mispronouncing, and I don't want to feel less confident. And so then you start just not speaking as much. And we do not want that. That is not the habit loop we want to get into, okay? What we want to do is, you know, the cue, start talking in English, okay? Well, we can kind of create another cue of let's get those, you know, those cues of slow down, move your mouth, speak up. So whenever you start practicing your pronunciation on your own, I would say whatever of those three are most helpful for you, choose one of those. Like if you tend to speak really fast, your cue needs to be slow down. You know, if you tend to not move your mouth very much, use that cue, move my mouth, you know? So whenever you sit down to practice, say, I'm going to move my mouth more. And then you start doing your practice. And so then you know, you're going through and you're practicing and you're correcting those sounds and things. And then, you know, you have a positive interaction. You have a, you know, you have a good speaking situation. And you're like, hey, this feels good. Okay, I'm going to do that again. And then that's, you know, and then you feel confident in the way they're speaking. That is the habit loop we want to create here. And that's what we're trying to do with the Pronunciation Pro course is to retrain that habit loop so that you are feeling confident. That reward is confidence instead of lack of confidence and stop talking. We want you to talk more because we know that you have a lot to share and you have a lot to offer. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Have you experienced this, or at least the alternative?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's now as before, it's just I'm kind of getting more and more compliment on the meetings and the presentation.
Good.
From my seniors and all that. The clarity has improved.
Good.
You know, it's a slow process, but it starts at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So slow down, speak up, and move your mouth. Definitely a point when you have a difficulty to get attention. You know, if you have difficulty to getting attention to your audience, what you are talking about, that slowing down also is not only helps your audience to kind of pay attention to you, it kinds of, when you slow down, the general perception might be you are telling something important. Mm-hmm. And you want them to digest that information before you proceed. Mm-hmm. So that's, it depends. It's a most likely need to figure out who your audience are and what you are talking to them. If you are talking some highly technical terminologies or ideas to someone who never exposed with those terminologies, you probably want to slow down much more than when you are talking to the audience of similar level or who has at least some background on those. You know, that's one of the strategies I use a lot of time.
Awesome. Yeah. And you guys, you know, you're doing different things and applying this in different ways, but, you know, I think there are some general ideas that are the same, and it's been so great to kind of hear how you are all applying things and doing it. I know we're over time here, so I don't want to keep you too long, but this has been so fun. I'm so glad that we have been able to get together for this book club and that you have been participated so well. I think that's what makes it the most fun. So thank you. Thank you for bringing your thoughts and ideas and sharing with me.
Yeah,
thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we close, I haven't officially chosen a book for next month. Do you have any thoughts or ideas as to books or concepts that would be helpful for you guys?
I think the one, you know, I haven't read it, but it's on my list.
Yeah.
Think Slow, Think Fast. That is one of the book in my list, but that's just the idea.
Okay, I'll look into that. Any other ideas or concepts or anything? There was one of the things on my list is actually something that we touched on a little bit today, is called The One Thing. Have you heard of that book? And it's basically helping us focus on those priorities, like we were talking about, making sure we put first things first, you know, those most important things first. There's a book called The One Thing, and it talks about prioritizing. So,
oh, okay, that would be a good one.
Would that be interesting to you guys?
Yeah.
That'll be interesting. Yes, sounds
Okay.
really good.
So let's. So that's actually on the top of my list. So I'll think more about that. But let me look into think slow, think fast, and maybe we'll put that in the rotation too, so we can get that in. Okay. Thank you so much for coming, you guys. It was awesome. Good to meet you and to get to know you a little more. And let's practice that habit loop.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Nice
All
to
right,
meet
have
you,
a good day.
everyone.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. I'll go back to bed. Bye.
Bye.